At the same time, a Ukrainian delegation is in the United States to discuss paths to peace and security guarantees for our land. All this and, of course, the most up-to-date news from the front lines in the TCH summary broadcast as part of the United Marathon on the 1,283rd day of the full-scale war. You're watching Channel 1+1. Today in Kyiv is a day of mourning for those killed as a result of the enemy attack. On the eve of August 28th, the Russian Federation carried out one of the most massive strikes on the capital. They targeted the city with both drones and missiles. The aftermath of the night strike was recorded at 33 locations at once. The Darnytskyi district suffered the most. There, the Russians destroyed the entrance of a 5-story apartment building. The search and rescue operation lasted for more than a day. 24 people were killed in this building by a Russian missile. In total, 25 people were killed in Kyiv yesterday, including 4 children. Across the entire capital, 225 buildings were damaged and 5,400 windows were shattered, according to the Kyiv City-State Administration. TSN correspondent Olena Hushchyk will provide a detailed report on yet another day of Russian terror.
Completely destroyed buildings on the left bank, shattered streets on the right. In total, 33 locations across all of Kyiv. This was yet another anti-record, with the aftermath of the strikes visible in every district of the capital. The night before Thursday and Russia's attack, which killed 23 people. Darnytskyi district, the area that suffered perhaps the most during this night attack. Behind me is a 5-story building that the Russians destroyed, or more precisely, a part of it. We can see that right now they're trying to find people under the rubble. In the first hours after the strike, residents trapped beneath these concrete depths were pleading for help. 3 people were rescued. The rest were searched for under the rubble by rescuers for more than a day. Dozens of loved ones waited on their knees.
There's a woman waiting for her daughter and her 2-year-old granddaughter. We stay by her side constantly, accompany her and keep in contact with her. There's also a man whose child was killed.
Concrete was crumbling before the journalists' eyes, and thick black smoke kept pouring out from under the firefighters' feet.
There are still hot spots down below, of course there are. But right here, the 40th firefighter is putting out the fire pretty well. They're dousing it with water because otherwise it would be impossible to work.
There are several helicopters with water in the sky at once. The number of casualties is increasing every hour. Right now, we can see rescuers bringing a stretcher and using a crane, lowering the body of another victim from the 4th or 5th floor. Around 1 in the morning, the body of the last victim is recovered from under the rubble. 22 people died in this building, and 4 of them were children.
Of these 22, 4 bodies have not yet been identified, and relatives are still searching for 8 more people.
It's the second day after the tragedy. Portraits of the residents stand near the ruins. Every 10 minutes, someone brings flowers and candles. It grows quieter. Only the sound of machinery crying and a dog's howl can be heard. Jesse's owner died. He was a security guard at the parking lot next to the building. In addition to the 5-story building, 2 more high-rises, a private house, a kindergarten, and dozens of cars at each location were damaged in this district. A few streets away, there's another damaged building. Around the 10th floor, there's a black hole from where the drone struck.
It's hard to describe what's happening here right now because the residents of this building are cleaning out all the burned belongings and throwing them straight out the windows. Everything just falls straight down, glass, belongings, and some heavy household items.
Virtually every apartment in at least 3 entrances has been destroyed. People are trying to salvage whatever survived. The police are taking statements from drivers one by one along the courtyard.
That's it. The doors here don't close anymore because the bodywork is warped from the fire.
All of Kyiv is covered in smoke. Administrative buildings, garages, and cars were burning. Medics, police officers, and firefighters are working at 33 locations simultaneously. Rescuers don't stop working even during air raid alerts, when explosions can be heard in nearby districts. The city center is also strewn with glass and fragments of construction debris as a result of the Russian attack. A shopping mall, office spaces, salons, coffee shops, and hundreds of windows in the surrounding buildings have been destroyed.
Inside, you could say it's more or less intact, but the facade is completely destroyed.
Despite this, most people continued to work. At the same time, apartment owners and office workers were patching up windows with plywood and carrying out whatever belongings had survived.
We took what was most valuable. I see a trophy.
That trophy is a winner's cup. We never give up.
Russia deliberately targeted the building next to the European Union representation as well. The British Council office was also affected, as were the workplaces of our journalist colleagues from Radio Liberty and Ukrainska Pravda. Windows were shattered in parts of the editorial offices and equipment was damaged. Lukyanivka was also hit. A huge crater formed in the Shevchenkivsky district not far from a gas station. Cars were buried under earth, a pole was knocked over, and wires were torn down. The 5-story building nearby was completely burned out, and the cars parked next to it caught fire. A children's playground and a kindergarten were also damaged. Miraculously, there were no casualties.
I've already cried. I've already cried.
It's the second day after the Russian attack. Rescue operations in the capital have been completed. However, the fate of 8 people is still unknown. Almost 1,000 Kyiv residents have lost their property. The Kyiv city-state administration counted more than 5,500 broken windows. Half of them have already been covered with film. Currently, all city services are working in sync, from utility workers to electricians and gas workers. Roads are being repaired and volunteers are working. At the headquarters, there is even a mobile passport service so that people who have lost their documents can quickly restore them. 23 families, according to the head of the military administration, are now being settled in temporary housing. Today is a day of mourning in Kyiv. State flags have been lowered on buildings, and in the evening, people come with candles to the building where the missile killed people to stand in silence. Olena Hushchyk, Alina Lisova, Natalia Nahorna, TSN, 1+1, Marathon, United News.
So Kyiv is recovering after the devastating Russian attack on August 28th. Since yesterday, traffic on Zhilyanska Street in the city center has been restricted, and only this evening was it reopened. TSN correspondent Oleksandr Romanyuk is working there on site, and he is now in touch with our studio. Oleksandr, good evening. So what is the current condition of Zhilyanska Street?
A celebration? Unfortunately, the word good probably can't be applied to this area because, as you can see behind me, there is a destroyed building. But it is just one of nearly 24 buildings that were damaged by the impact of 2 Russian missiles. In fact, the victims include a wide variety of establishments, from 2 business centers where the British Council was located, to an educational institution, to residential buildings, and even to new constructions that were still being built in this area. In fact, what should be said is that the reason there were no casualties was because the attack happened at night, and accordingly there were no people in the business centers. As for the residential buildings, there isn't such a dense development here, and the buildings themselves are quite low, so not that many people lived here. And sometimes, today we saw for ourselves that it was literally a miracle that saved people from death. We visited the apartment of one of the residents, Mrs. Olena, and she said that yes, she was aware of the air raid alert. When she heard it and heard the sounds of the Shahed drone, she first hid in the bathroom to wait it out, but then, since the atmosphere seemed calm, she went back. But still, she says, her inner voice reminded her that she needed to keep herself safe. And that night, she decided to sleep in the hallway, she says, because she simply couldn't afford not to sleep. Like most Ukrainians, she had to be at work by 7 in the morning. And in fact, this attempt to sleep in the hallway saved her life. Let me give you her direct speech so you can hear for yourself what happened.
I was about to lie down on the bed, but then something stopped me. So I made my bed here, lay down to sleep, surrounded myself with pillows and, 2 windows on the ceiling, and that was it. When I woke up, I didn't understand anything at all. There was a loud explosion. I was thrown up, and then something started hissing, either smoke or dust. And my phone was underneath me. I realized it was a strike. Literally, perhaps only about 10 seconds later, there was a truly devastating second strike, and everything around me, including the entire ceiling and the sturdy wall, completely fell on me, and a sort of protective pocket was miraculously formed. I was just lying there, completely still.
Fortunately, Ms. Natalia didn't have to lie there for long. She says it was the phone that saved her. She immediately called the rescuers, called her son, who was able to let them know that she was alive and unharmed and that she needed to be rescued. And in fact, they arrived very quickly and pulled the woman out from under the rubble. And there are a lot of stories like this here. Yesterday, there was a big problem because there was so much construction debris. If you saw that apartment we showed, in fact, almost everything has already been cleaned up there. But in many apartments, there are still problems because, for example, the doors are jammed, there are emergency walls, and in many buildings we've seen that the load-bearing walls have holes, so the building is actually unsafe and poses a certain danger. That's why special services will still need to work here. And on the other hand, dealing with the aftermath of this horror was difficult because it was a workday, and there weren't always a lot of volunteers who could come out and help. Usually they gather in the evening and do all the work they can. But again, problems still arise. We managed to talk to the volunteers whom we regularly see at all the missile strike sites in the capital. And they say people were already there yesterday evening, but there was a problem with materials, for example, from the city authorities. They didn't receive any at all and had to use their own, which they got from donations from people. They are ready to work, they have their own tools, but they are calling on the authorities to unite and patch up the windows and roofs as quickly as possible so that people can at least secure their property and these buildings are protected. Let me give you a direct quote.
This is the city center. There aren't that many elderly people living alone here. When something happens closer to the industrial zone or in residential districts, it's mostly elderly people, and we really help them clean up and provide them with food. And these are our working principles. Here we do the same thing. We hope the authorities will respond quickly to the roof damage because September is just a few days away, which means rain. So the needs are the same. We always need people, we always need water and energy drinks. We always need basic help from the authorities, OSB boards. We're not asking for anything more.
And actually all the locals' information was collected and their testimonies were recorded. In fact, many of them will now receive assistance from the state and will be looking for a place to spend the night because unfortunately in most houses it's impossible to stay overnight even after cleaning up. Back to the studio.
And right now TSN correspondent Olena Hushchyk is working there. We have her on the line with the studio. Olena, hello. So, as we know, the search for people under the rubble has already been completed. What is happening now at the site of the Russian terrorist attack? And I want to clarify, this evening there was information that the number of officially recorded deaths has increased. What is known about this?
Hello, Sviatoslav. Well, just before going live, I managed to talk to our rescuers and find out what happened, why the number of deaths increased in the evening. Today, searches continued all day at 2 locations, and there they found body fragments. Identification was carried out, and that's why the number of 25 dead has been confirmed. I am now next to the building in Darnytskyi. It's already very dark now and almost nothing can be seen, but the search operations have ended. Here is the building. You can see it in the darkness. Here are children's toys that people bring here, and flowers are brought here too. And here, in fact, is the epicenter of the explosion. Rescuers were still working here a few hours ago, but now you see it's possible to come closer. And over there you can see people shining flashlights, those who have come here and are searching for their belongings even in the darkness. And that's what they're doing right now. The police are monitoring everything here to make sure people walk carefully. That's it. Well, as you can see, I think this is an emergency situation. Not really proper, but the police are watching and keeping an eye on the people searching for their belongings here. In fact, we've also seen the dog Jessie here, who has been walking around and has already gone viral on all social networks. Of course, we talk to people who come here and bring flowers. And you know, the stories and fragments of conversations with several people send chills down your spine. Please listen.
Is this your home? I'm just asking.
No, this isn't our true home, but our beloved children will definitely be here at some point.
What happened to your children? My husband's beloved sister tragically died here at this very spot. We still cannot locate her. She is officially considered a missing person, and the search efforts are ongoing. Furthermore, her eldest son and his girlfriend, along with her partner, tragically perished at this very location as well. Just yesterday, after extensive forensic analysis, we were able to positively identify the body that was recovered.
It's very difficult to work here emotionally because after we talk to people, they go up there to the top of the building, walk through the remains of their home and say, we have nowhere else to go. By the way, there are always medics working here because people often feel unwell. And right now, even as we speak, medics are arriving and monitoring the health of those who come here. Of course, there's also a headquarters operating here. And just a few hours ago, Volodymyr Zelensky came here together with the Minister of Internal Affairs, Klimenko, and the head of the Kyiv military administration. They personally spoke with people, asking them about how the process of documenting all the consequences of the strikes is going. Here's a fragment of that conversation. Please listen.
I've been left with nothing. The 28th, you understand? There are no other tragedies here. As for Darnytskyi, as far as I understand, it's a pity the city leaders aren't here, but I promise you, we have decided on this issue. As soon as we get above the shovel, we'll get out quickly. For now, there is temporary housing, and you will definitely be given a set of documents as soon as possible so that you can have an apartment, so you can rent an apartment, and then be able to have your own personal life.
Anagion host.
The president assured that by Wednesday, the first payments of 40,000 hryvnias will be made to the affected residents of this building. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on it.
And I'll add from myself that even now the passport and exit service is really working here, as well as the rescue and medical teams who are helping and monitoring people's health. They are bringing food and water here, and they say that tomorrow utility workers will arrive to completely clear all these emergency areas, and then they'll continue clearing the debris. That's the situation, Sviatoslav. We'll keep following the house and its story tomorrow. And now I want to take you over and show you a report by my colleague Olena Lisova, who was working here during the day and collecting stories about the building in Darnytskyi.
Heavy machinery is compacting piles of earth near the building. Meanwhile, rescuers have already finished clearing the debris. And today, on the second day after the Russian attack, they are allowing residents to enter their apartments to retrieve at least something that survived from their homes. We go up to the 5th floor with Mr. Ihor. Wearing protective helmets and accompanied by a rescuer, we find the stairs still strewn with glass.
And this has already been cleaned up.
Ihor was at home that night with his girlfriend. Both of them woke up from the powerful explosions.
The apartment itself, just look. Everything is destroyed, overturned. The doors flew in here. Who could hide here? There had been a few strikes before this, but they were somewhere far away. The building shook several times, and it all happened, not even in a second. We only realized that the whole place was covered in dust.
They, like the other neighbors, ran out of the house in their slippers. What they saw, Ihor calls a real hell.
When we went down to the 1st floor, over there on the left, it was all buried. We heard screams. People gathered. Luckily, there was a light bulb, so we used it to see. Everyone gathered and started digging people out. We managed to dig out 2 children. Then another Shahed drone hit, but thank God on the side where, as I understand, the emergency services weren't letting anyone through. We dug out 2 children. I don't know, one is named Maxim. I hope they're alive. We dug them out as much as we could so they could breathe, but we didn't move them too much because one of them was shouting, "My head hurts." One of them had his head trapped under a concrete slab.
With tears in his eyes, Ihor says that he lost his friend Valery that night. He also lived on the 5th floor, but in the part of the building that took the brunt of the strike.
He was 53 years old. His birthday was just recently. He worked as a welder. I mean, well, all the beds and everything were welded by him. Just a simple, ordinary guy, a good man. We literally had coffee together that evening, just talking. The 5th floor, right at the very epicenter of the strike. I don't know, maybe his son in Germany will see this. There's probably no way to contact him.
Igor himself, like his girlfriend, got away with just a few scratches. He calls it a miracle and says he owes his rescue to an icon, the only thing that remained hanging untouched in its place.
My mom gave me this icon and told me to keep it. She said it would protect me from fires, from troubles. And 2 days before that, we took it down, washed the little curtain, and hung it back up nicely. And then, maybe a day or 2 later, something like this happens. Everything is torn apart, but not even the towel fell down. It's still hanging on the nail. Everything else, the iron doors are ripped out, the fridge is smashed open, but the icon is still hanging there. There is a God in this world, and justice will be served, and the people who did this will be punished. I believe that this is exactly what will happen.
Ihor carefully takes the icon down from the wall and packs it together with the other surviving belongings into a small bundle. He says that now he will guard this talisman even more carefully.
You better put it on because something might have fallen during the accident.
Meanwhile, in the neighboring apartment, Mrs. Olena is gathering the belongings that survived.
Alive.
She was sleeping at the moment of impact. The wall fell onto the table and that saved her. She was trapped under the concrete slab for 2 hours.
Well, I was lucky. I was miraculously lucky. There was an explosion before that. There was a strike before that, and literally 2 or 3 seconds, just a moment, and then the second one. I spent 2 hours running through the rubble.
So you were fully conscious the whole time?
Yes. I'm telling you, it was a miracle. A wall fell on this table along the way, and it didn't collapse to such an extent that one hand could move, and that's it.
Olena says she only got a bruise and hasn't seen a doctor yet. He admits that he still doesn't realize everything that happened.
Well, that's it. Well, I'm alive.
Outside, with bags of belongings she managed to gather, another resident of this building is waiting. Today she also entered her destroyed apartment for the first time. She doesn't say much, only shows us what actually survived in her home that terrible night.
I'm alright. God grant everyone the same. This is my apartment with the flag. The flag survived, and I'm safe too.
Alina Lisova, Yevhen Litvinenko, Victoria Pismena, TSN, 1+1, United News Marathon.